What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about how I've bought 6 houses for $0 out of pocket so far this year, and how you can actually buy houses for $0 down. Not include the VA loan. I do a ton of content on that. If you want to learn more about the VA loan, I have an entire playlist about it. It's amazing, but this is investment properties, $0 down. Yes, it's a real thing. No, there's no guru bullshit here. This is it. I've done it 6 times in the last 4 months. All right, let me start by saying that, look, I get it. You are skeptical. You are probably like, no matter what he says, I'm gonna be able to find some reason it's not $0 down. I'm not saying that you're never gonna spend a penny on this property, right? Like, who knows? You're probably gonna have some water heater blow up at some point, you're not prepared and you have to pay for it. I don't know. I just got a $4,000 bill for turning over a unit and replacing all the flooring. It is what it is. What I'm saying is that you can get into the property with these different methods for $0 down, and sometimes you can do the entire project without a single penny out of pocket. You might even get paid on the refi. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this, so we're gonna dig into those. We're gonna talk about 4 real quick. So the first one, lease options, and then we got subject to, and then we got seller financing, and then we got private lending, right? All different methods. Now, there are other methods, but these are the ones that I've used the most. Now, lease option means that you are signing an agreement saying, hey, it's like a rent to own. Like, hey, I'm gonna lease this property from you, and within the next 2 years, I'm gonna buy it at this price. You could do that with a down payment. You could do that with no down payment. You could do that with interest-only payments. You could do that where you're paying a lot of principal down on it over that time. Up to you guys how you structure it. Subject to, the second type, means that you are buying subject to the existing mortgage. So let's say you're buying a $150,000 house that has a mortgage for $100,000 left on it, and you are assuming that $100,000 mortgage. You could do that with $0 down. You could do that with 5% down, 10% down, whatever you guys agree to, but then you get the bank to agree to you assuming the mortgage. You take over the existing mortgage, you start making all the payments, bada bing, bada boom, you got a property. Number 3, seller financing, which we're gonna dig into here in a minute, but ultimately this is where you and the owner discuss paying them on terms. Monthly payments, lump sums, balloon payments, and all of that. Number 4 is private lenders. And that basically means that you're buying the property cash, but you're using somebody else's cash to buy the property. And I'm gonna dig into that for you here in just a minute. So you can essentially use this other person's cash to buy the property. Maybe they even pay for the renovation budget. You pay them in points and interest, and then you close on the property. And you refinance, you pull all the money out, you pay them off, and you're left with the property with $0 down, $0 in at all if you do it right. And then there's also partnerships where you could do like, hey, I'll manage the property if you bring the money, or hey, I found the property and I'll manage it if you bring all the money. There's a lot of different ways you can get in that way with $0 down or low down, or you know, structuring the partnership in various ways. Heck, you can even do what I just did, which we haven't closed, we're not even under contract yet, but we have the offer out, and they're, you know, assuming we get it back, we'll buy this thing, where a buddy of mine needed to raise the money for a deal. I found the borrower or the lender and as a partner, and we're doing a 45-45-10 partnership. So I'm getting a small piece of the equity just for connecting them, and you know, I'll help with like the Google My Business and like the web presence and stuff, but I won't be actively managing the property, and I didn't have to bring any cash to the deal. So, you know, there's also opportunities out there like that. All right, to deep dive a little bit more into seller financing, now I have some longer form videos on this, but this would basically be like I came up to you and said, hey, I want to buy your car for $5,000. I don't have $5,000. How about I make payments to you of whatever, $200, $200 a month for 25 months. Boom. But you can also add in interest. You could do a down payment. You could do no down payment. You could do no interest payment. I mean, really with seller financing, you can do anything you want. And there's a couple different ways to do this. We've done it a few different ways just this year. We bought one property where we put $0 down, we have no interest, and we pay no payments until 12 months after we closed it. This was a massive gut renovation, like a fire reno, where the house was nearly burned to the ground. And so we've got it on a 12-month note with no interest and no payments, which allows us to do the massive renovation without a whole lot of issues. And then we've got the another one where we're going to have the payment, or we're buying it for $73,500. We're going to pay $3,500 down, and then the other $70,000 will have to be same thing, zero down or zero interest, no payments for 12 months. And we'll renovate the house. And when we refinance the house or sell the house, we'll pay them off, right? And so there's those options. And then I've got some where it was zero down and monthly payments of X, and it's principal and interest, and you are paying interest, so over the long run you'll pay more, but eventually you can refinance out of that seller financing and do that. I also, my 10 unit, I bought with the seller carried 10% down. And so instead of having to bring 15% down to the closing, I brought 5%. So I brought 5% down on my 10 unit, the seller carried 10%, and then the bank gave the loan for the other 85%. So that's another way that you can use seller financing. So all kinds of creative ways. These are all strategies that I've actually done. Those are properties that I've actually done. And like legitimately, I could show you the contract, zero down, zero interest, zero payments for 12 months. I've got it. I actually texted it or messaged it to somebody on Instagram the last time I shared the story because I like them enough that I want them to know I'm legit. And they had commented something on my Instagram that was kind of like, I don't know, like, can't tell if that's, a couple people were like, I can't tell if that's legit. Like, oh, it sounds great in theory, but I'd love to see it done. And I was like, well, here's the contract, done. So yeah, the fourth way, private lending, other people's money. Now there's the partnership game, but we're going to talk private lending. Private lending is basically like, if I'm buying a house, we'll make the numbers easy for $70,000, and it's going to need a $30,000 renovation, and it's going to be worth $150,000, right? I'm going to be $100,000 all in. Now, I could go do hard money, where I have to bring 10 or 20% down, and I have to do all these things and all this stuff, and pay a lot of interest, pay a lot of points. There's all these details and all these things I got to work with. I could do a bank loan where it's even worse. I've got to do credit stuff. I've got to do probably draws on the construction, so I can't take it as fast as I want to for things, all these different stuff. And then the other option, the one that I like, is private lending, which means that I go to somebody and I say, hey, I got this deal. I need to borrow $100,000. It'll probably take 3 or 4 months for us to be done, but we'll do a 6-month term just to be safe. I'll pay you 1 point and 10% interest, and if we go past the 6-month mark, I'll give you a second point and 12% interest past that point. Cool, easy. Now, if you have friends who have some money, they lend you the money. On $100,000, you pay them $1,000 in points, and you pay them $1,000, $10,000 a year, which I think boils out to like $800 a month or $750 a month or something like that in monthly payments on interest. And what you do, a lot of cases, these people are lending from like a self-directed IRA. And so I'll make all the payments back to them on the back end. So instead of having to, it's kind of weird to say like, hey, if you lend me $100,000, I'll cut you a check for $1,000 back. Kind of odd. Like, might as well just only lend me 99. So what I prefer to do is to do all on the back end. So you lend me $100,000, I do the deal 3-4 months. I then pay you back all the points, all the interest, and everything on the back end. And the house is done. I've already refinanced or sold the house, and I'm into the property for zero down. So perfect example. We got this house. We've got 2 actually that we just did. Appraisals are done, pending the renovation, or pending the refinance. The first one, or I'm gonna get their numbers all mixed up, but effectively it was like one was like 55 purchase, 25 reno, and one was like 50 purchase, 22 reno, or something like that. So it was like $164,000, I think, that we borrowed from this one guy for both properties. 1 point, 10% interest, everything's all good. Both those projects actually went a little bit over budget, and they are taking longer than they should have just because of plumbing, and now the refinance is taking a little longer than originally anticipated, but whatever. But they appraised for 133 and 154 or 157, and so we're gonna be able to refinance and pull all that cash back out, plus a little bit extra for ourselves. I'm gonna pay my former acquisitions manager on that, and then I'll have a little bit of cash left over for the business, as well as 2 rentals, right? And I will have put $0 of my own money into them by the time this is all said and done, right? So that's the power of private lending. Now I know If you're a borrower, an investor, you're probably like, oh my goodness, that's all great, but how do I find private lending? Well, you would be surprised at how easy that can be. Prime example, I'm at a conference last weekend, and I'm sitting at a table talking to my buddy Rich, and I'm like, blah, 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 this is what I'm working on, yada, yada. He's like, oh, what are you doing for financing? Oh, private money, 100%, 100% down or 100% finance. I'm putting nothing down, yada, yada. I'm paying these kind of terms. It's great. It's easy. It's a win-win. And this lady who I'd never met before is sitting next to me, and she starts asking some questions, and then she was like, can I have your number? I'd like to call you about this later with my husband so we can talk about all of these private lending stuff. So she and I have a call tomorrow. She's interested in being a private lender. I'm gonna find out how much she has to lend. It's gonna be great. Same conference, closing ceremony, talking to another lady, and she's accredited and interested in investing in real estate, doesn't know where to begin, doesn't have a whole lot of time. She's probably gonna start investing in syndication. So on both of those conversations, they came up as a direct result of me talking about what I was doing and the opportunities I have to other people who were around me, and someone in the conversation loop overhearing the conversation and being interested. Now, if that's the case, then believe me when I tell you, if you start a social following, you build a brand, you start talking about what you're doing online and to everyone you meet, and you talk about the opportunities you have, you will be amazed how many people come out of the woodwork looking to invest with you. Prime example, there's a gentleman who is in my buyers list, investor list, who I didn't even know was there. We haven't done a deal yet. He's been seeing a lot of my stuff, and eventually we will do something together, I'm sure of it. He is the father of a friend of mine from high school. We played t-ball together, and he saw what I was doing online. I was talking about what I was doing, and he was watching for a while. I had no idea he was even in my group, and he does hard money lending, and he's interested. And so there's a lot of those opportunities. I've got this, like a fairly significant amount of people on my buyers list, investors list, private lending list that have been built out just from building the following, talking to people about what I'm doing, letting people know what opportunities are out there. And I thought for the longest time that raising money in private lending was gonna be the hardest thing in the world. And I can tell you in the last 4 months, I've raised over $600,000 in less than 10 emails and a few phone calls to the network. And I can pretty much at this point, I can pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, I got this deal coming, do you want it? And if they don't answer, I'll call the next person, but usually the first person answers. So prime example, I closed one last Friday. I'm closing one this Thursday. I made 3 phone calls. Well, sorry, I sent 1 email and made 2 phone calls. That's it. And so finding private lenders isn't as hard as you think. Now, on the private lending side, here's a few things that you wanna know. You wanna be first position lien. So you wanna be the only lien. You wanna be the purchase and the renovation, or just the purchase, or just whatever, or just the renovation if they actually bought cash, but you wanna be first position lien. You want a deed of trust with a promissory note. Now, you don't have to sign the deed of trust, just the borrower and the title company sign and notarize and file with the county. You as the lender, you don't have to sign that. I know that kind of throws people for a loop. But a deed of trust and a promissory note, that way you're actually first position lien, and if somebody loses the house, then you're gonna get paid out before anyone else, right? If something goes wrong, you'll be paid out before anybody else. If you're the second position lien holder, like let's say I'm seller financing a house and I need the renovation covered. If something goes wrong and the seller finance people have to foreclose on the house, they'll get all of their money back before you get $1. And then you'll get whatever's left of the deal. That could be fine, but if there's not enough equity, you might be the one who gets screwed. So the second position is inherently more risky. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, but I'm not telling you not to do second position, but if you are gonna do a second position lien, you need to get compensated for the risk. So, prime example, currently on one of our deals, I'm paying 2 points and 10% interest. If it goes past 6 months, 12% interest, and a third point for second position. And he gets 5% of the gross profit. So whatever that project nets, he will get 5% of. Now that is not ideal lending terms. That is expensive money. However, we lent him quite a bit less, we had the seller financing, and so we didn't need as much money. So it was like, well, if we're doing 0 down, 0 interest, 0 payments on this, and we pay a little bit more on this, it balances out, right? So I'm not saying you should expect those kinds of terms, because that's definitely expensive money, and most people probably won't do that much for second position, but you should get compensated more for a second position note then a first position note. Everything else is the same. Deed of trust, title company. Don't ever wire money to anybody other than the escrow company, title company. That's a scam. Only the title company. Make sure you're communicating with the title company. Make sure you talk to them about when to wire the funds and everything. And then it's extremely passive. You wire the money, they do the project, you get paid out when it's done. Boom, you did nothing and you earned a pretty good return, right? If you do the math on that, 1 point and 10% interest, if they close it in like 2 months, it's like 20% interest. If they do like 4 months, it's like 16 or 14% interest. You know, it only gets down towards 12% or 10% IRR by like the end of the year. So it's a pretty substantial return. And as long as they know what they're doing, I don't like to use the word guaranteed because stuff can always go wrong, but it's pretty much guaranteed because they know what they're doing. So, you know, they're going to pay you, especially if they're like me, where they have a platform and their reputation is ultimately more important than most of what they're doing, right? So, all right, so the final piece on that is, why are people willing to lend to us? I already mentioned this, but it's all about your character, right? It's about your platform, it's about your reputation, it's about you knowing what you're doing, it's about you talking about what you're doing, it's about you being a person who's worth lending to. That's it. Lenders want to know that their money is going to be protected, whether that means that the asset itself is going to cover it, or that they know you as an operator are going to cover it. It's the same thing with passive investing with syndications, same thing with a lot of this stuff, but just know that you need to be a person worth lending money to before you start asking people for money. And also, you're not asking people for money, you're offering opportunities. You are offering them a return on their money that's sitting there doing nothing. That's it. You got to frame it that way. You don't want to go around asking people for cash. You want to give them opportunities. So, hope this helped. That's some actual legitimate ways that I am currently buying money or buying properties zero down, and in some cases without a penny in the entire deal, even through the exit or the refinance and rent. Lots of opportunities out there. You just got to be creative. The more creative you are in real estate, the more lucrative you're going to be. So make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, leave a comment down below with what was your favorite part of this and what you'd like to see more of. Have a great fucking day.